The finished object kind of need no introduction. It's just incredibly soft. For me, this is like the perfect red. Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Juliette and I'm a PhD student who loves to knit in her spare time. And today we have a lot of things to talk about. If you're not new here, thank you for coming back to my podcast episode. It's been quite a long time since my last episode because I've been really busy basically. I'm in my last 4 months of my PhD at the moment, so the pressure is really on to finish writing my chapters and basically overall submit my thesis at some point in the next 4 months. So yeah, not much time to knit on the side basically. And when I do have spare time, I've been really prioritizing kind of socializing with people and basically enjoying my last year as a uni student. So yeah, I've been quite busy with that and therefore there hasn't been too much time to knit and therefore do YouTube and stuff like that. But hopefully everything that I'm going to talk about today is stuff that I've started and I've cast on since my last episode. So everything that I'll be talking about today will be new content, so to speak. So I hope you enjoy today's video and let's jump right into it. Today I'm wearing my It's Not a Sweatshirt by Pernille Larsen, which is they're the Knitting for Olive designer basically. And this pattern, I think you can find on the website as a standalone PDF, but it's also in the Knitting for Olive book that was published maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And so I've purchased the book, so this is where I got my pattern from. It's knitted in the Camel's yarn Baby Suri silk. That's the yarn that's giving this jumper a really lovely variegated effect. And I'm holding it with Sandnes Garn Sunday. And I think the Sandnes Garn Sunday is in the color Above the Clouds. And the Baby Suri silk by the Camel's yarn is in the color North Coast Coven. I'll leave the link to this project in the description and also the podcast episode where I talked about this jumper. This episode, I'm going to talk about just a couple of finished objects and then a lot of works in progress. The finished object kind of need no introduction. I'm sure everyone will recognize what this is. It's the Sophie Scarf, for those who don't know, by PetiteKnit. It's one of her most popular patterns because it's basically just like, not a triangle, but just a really easy scarf that you do by just garter stitch, so knitting all the time. But you also have to do some increases on the side. Basically, these cashmere yarns that I bought a long time ago when I was traveling in Switzerland with the hopes of basically making multiple Sophie scarves that I could match with whatever outfit I was wearing. So I've also got a pink one and a dark navy blue that I bought. Basically, I had a couple of these already finished, but I hadn't blocked them and I hadn't like weaved in the ends, or they weren't completely done. So I kind of picked them back up again so that I could have Sophie scarves because the weather's getting very cold now and I just wanted to have some Sophie scarves ready to wear for this winter season. I hope it's not too redundant because there's 2 of them, but a lot of knitting YouTube at least has knit these Sophie scarves a lot. But they've been extremely useful, especially because the cashmere is extremely lightweight. This is Lang Yarn's cashmere. It's kind of the same qualities as Cardiff Cashmere Classic, I think. The cashmere is very light and very soft, so against your neck you have no irritations whatsoever. So I think it's the perfect fiber for making a Sophie scarf. Yeah, it's just such a lovely fabric and it's also extremely lightweight. So as I said, like it's very nice on your neck and it's very easy to carry because you can just kind of like roll it up and put it in your coat pocket. You're not likely to lose it or anything because like you can put it away easily. So really enjoying my Sophie scarves at the moment. Now let's move right into the works in progress. So the first one I'm going to talk about is something that I'm really excited about because I'm finally using the Knitting for Olive yarn that I bought in Copenhagen from their flagship store to make this jumper. So this is the Balloon Sweater by PetiteKnit. I don't know if it's going to show up properly on camera, but it's basically quite an old pattern by PetiteKnit. I realized it was published in 2019 and it features this really lovely balloon sleeves, as the name suggests. But otherwise, it's a very simple kind of mock neck jumper. And it's constructed kind of in a similar way as the Ivy top, where you work in the round to do the German short rows to shape your neck whilst also doing some rapid increases for the shoulders. And then after that's done, you separate front and back to knit, to knit front and back separately. So this is the back section that I'm knitting at the moment. And then you rejoin them in the round once you reach the end of the yoke, to join them around just under the armpits to continue knitting the body in the round, and then you pick up the sleeves. As I was doing the knitting, the construction of this, I was thinking like, yeah, it feels really similar to the ivy top. The one thing I struggled with was the Italian cast on the neckline. I really struggled with the tension of this stuff. I think I had to redo it like 2 or 3 times to get it right, because unlike any other cast off where you tend to not want to be too tight when you're casting on, did I say cast off? Unlike any other cast on method where you don't want to be too tight, with the Italian cast on method, you really want to make sure your stitches are cast on very tight, because otherwise any looseness will show up in your cast on edge as being really wonky. And so that's why I had to redo it multiple times. But otherwise, a pretty straightforward process. You do these rapid increases for the shoulders whilst doing the German short rows for the neck. And because you knit the neck first and then you move on to the body straight away, I think the neck here is going to be quite relaxed. So I tend to not like high necks or mock necks too much, but I think for this one it's going to be quite nice because it will have quite a relaxed look, I hope. At least that's what it looks like from the pictures. And so yeah, I finished the construction there, so I'm working on the back right now. I still got a couple centimeters to go before I can then put the back on hold and work on the front here. The yarn that I'm using, as I mentioned, I got from the Knitting for Olive flagship store in Copenhagen when I was there for a conference last year in April. I have a whole video talking about Copenhagen yarn shopping if you want to check that out. This is the Knitting for Olive Merino held with the Knitting for Olive Soft Silk Mohair, both in the color Petroleum Green. Before I went to the flagship store, I actually looked at the website to see what sort of colors I would be wanting to buy, because I was telling myself that I would buy basically one sweater quantity of this combination without really any particular pattern in mind. I just knew that I had to get 5 balls of each to make sure I had enough for a jumper. Petroleum Green really caught my eye. I know that Knitting for Olive does really good basic colors, like basic neutral colors, and they have like a whole range. They have like 10 different types of white basically. But I think for my first purchase of this combo for a jumper, because I've never knitted a jumper with these yarns before, I thought I should go with a color that brings joy rather than a color for utility, aka like a beige color. So yeah, really happy with this color choice, and also really happy with how the fabric has turned out. It's just incredibly soft, and like I really understand the hype basically of people saying why this combination is maybe like the holy grail of knitting. Moving on to the next work in progress. So this is actually something that I'm self-drafting, and I'll just talk about the yarn first. It's the green cashmere yarn by Save the Yarn. It's a brand from Basel, Switzerland that tries to do recycled yarn. So it's a really cool concept because it also substantially reduces the price of the yarn. So this I got, at the time there was a slight discount, but even without the discount, it was 12 francs a ball, which is just under 10 pounds a ball for 25 grams of cashmere in kind of the same thickness of Cardiff cashmere, which is I think what people use as a benchmark. So Cardiff cashmere and Lang yarn cashmere from before are usually around the 15-pound mark, whereas this was just under or just around the 10-pound mark. So a third off from your usual cashmere prices because this is recycled cashmere. And it's this really beautiful color. It's like red close to almost raspberry red. It's got a really good blue undertone to it. So for me, this is like the perfect red. And I tried to do my nails and I didn't get the red like this as I was hoping. I was hoping for much more blue red like this. And I think the polish that I used ended up being a bit too orange tone for my taste. Anyway, so I bought this, if you remember from a few episodes ago, I bought this in Switzerland with the hopes of making a whole set of gloves, hat and scarf. So this is the scarf basically. I've already made the gloves and these have been really well used. These are the penny gloves by PetiteKnit and I've been using them for about a year, so 1.5 winter seasons, and they're still looking just as good as new. So I'm really pleased with the quality of this yarn. So the scarf is just a tube. I'm calling this a self-drafted pattern, but really it's just like knitting in the round, and I don't want to make a pattern out of this because it feels a bit ridiculous. It's just I cast on like 90 stitches, I think. I calculated how many stitches I need to cast on to get a certain width for my scarf. I think I wanted a scarf that was 18 centimeters wide, so then the whole circumference is 36 centimeters, and then I looked up my gauge and converted those 36 centimeters into 90 stitches. That's the maths that I did. And then the first round I did 1 row of purling, and then for all the rounds after I'm just knitting stockinette in the round, and this is like a really mindless project. I do find that the knitting tension with cashmere yarn, well, at least this cashmere yarn in particular, is a little bit difficult because I think in the back of my mind I know that it's a delicate yarn, so maybe I don't kind of hold it or pull at the yarn as I would usually. So yeah, it's not as fast knitting, but it's certainly very mindful or mindless, whichever way you want to think about it. But yeah, I'm at the start of it. It's gonna take a while. Apparently for a good scarf, you need it to be the same length as your height. So I am 161 centimeters tall, so I need to make a scarf about that long. It's gonna take a while. So I'm very keen to have a red scarf because I think red winter accessories look really good. And I'm already really happy with my red penny gloves because I feel like they add a pop of color in my outfits, and so I really want to make a red scarf, hopefully before this year's winter season ends. Who knows? Speaking of winter seasons, we are now fully into Christmas gift knitting season, and so I'm going to talk about a couple of gift knitting projects that I've started and I hopefully finish before Christmas rolls around. So this is also a knitting for olive yarn, and this is the Cumulus Blouse by PetiteKnit. Also a very popular pattern by PetiteKnit. Sorry if today's video is a bit PetiteKnit heavy. It tends to happen a lot. But anyway, so this is actually a gift knit for my mum. She initially requested like a long sleeve top. I suggested the blouse #1 by My Favorite Things Knitwear for her. But then I was showing some pictures of what the yarn color would look like. And one of the pictures ended up being someone who knitted a Cumulus blouse in this color. And she saw the v-neck and she said, actually, I would prefer something that has a v-neck over the boat neck style of the blouse #1. So we switched over to that. I already had the pattern for both, so didn't change anything in terms of purchasing the correct pattern. But making some really good progress with this pattern. I've kind of left everything else in the back burner whilst I've been working on this project because I really want to make sure that my gift knits are made on time. The Cumulus Blouse is also a very, very popular pattern by PetiteKnit. It's usually done for, I think, kind of interseasonal knitting. It's a very simple raglan construction, and it's also knitted on 4.5mm needles if you hit gauge with what she's suggesting, because it's an 18 stitch by 10 centimeter gauge. So it's like a relatively quick pattern, right? Because it's got a relatively large gauge. The raglan construction is super simple. You are working flat until you've reached the point where you can join the v-neck bits here at the front. And yeah, you just do like raglan increases, essentially. Very, very straightforward. I think a great first-timers pattern probably, because you kind of get to learn the basic stitches and the basic increasing techniques, all the while it being not too fine a gauge that it takes too long for a beginner to get through, but also not like a super chunky pattern just for the sake of it being faster and easier for a beginner. I think a beginner could definitely knit something like this. I need to make sure, my mom requested no cropped styles. I usually go for quite a cropped length, but she specifically requested no, make sure it actually feels like full body length. full torso length rather. Really working on this a lot. It's been about 2 weeks since I cast on, so I think for 2 weeks time it's relatively good progress. The yarn that I'm using for this, it's also knitting for Olive, and it's the merino held with the pure silk actually, in both the color soft blue, which is this lovely blue that kind of veers grey depending on the lighting that you have on the yarn. My mom kind of requested like a greyish color, and I thought this would be a perfect combination for her. I hope that the combination of pure silk and merino means that you kind of get the best out of both worlds from those two fiber types, where the silk will provide a lot of like loftiness and drape, whilst the merino will provide warmth and kind of temperature regulating properties as well. Honestly, this is probably going to be a really lovely long sleeve top, and I wish I was keeping it for myself. Once again, I knit something that I wish I had done for myself for other people, but the people I usually gift knit for are usually very gift knit worthy, so they take good care of the stuff that I make for them, thankfully. And staying with the gift knits, this is something that I'm knitting for my brother for Christmas. It's a pair of DK Treasures ribbed socks, which is something that I've knitted before. I've actually featured it in my last podcast episode because I knitted this pattern for my best friend's birthday as well. So these are just very kind of plain ribbed DK socks. The pattern is free. I'll make sure to leave everything that I've talked about today on like the Ravelry links and stuff in the description as well. It's a really quick and easy pattern, and the ribbing provides quite a lot of leeway in terms of fit. It kind of takes the shape of whoever is wearing this socks. So it's a great way of knitting something as a gift knit without having to worry too much about sizing and whatnot. I've knit this for my father as well. So this time it's my brother requesting these. And I'm knitting these in Co-op Socks Yeah DK. So this is, I think the color, I honestly can't remember the color name. I'll make sure to leave that in the Ravelry page. But it's a lovely heathered grey. And so you can't really see the heathering in the ball, but I think with the sock you can see quite well where it's grey, but it's not just plain grey. There's a bit of dimension in there. And I believe this is a blend of merino with nylon, so hopefully these keep my brother's feet nice and warm. He lives in Switzerland, so he definitely needs warm socks. Now, going back to the Sophie Scarf saga, I was actually knitting the pink version of my Sophie Scarf kind of set, and then I realized that I had used the wrong needle size. So the other Sophie scarves I knitted in 3.5mm needles, and I was convinced I knitted them in 3mm needles. So I had started these and kind of stopped around this point, and then picked them back up but with 3mm needles. And I don't know if you can see, but I think the stitches are definitely different around this part compared to this whole part. And yeah, that's because I used different size needles for those. So I'm gonna have to frog these back to the bit where I think I've made the change in needle size. And yeah, pick them back up at some point and knit these. But I'm not too sure about this pink color. I don't know if it suits me really well. I don't generally wear pink, so I might gift this to someone. There's someone in particular who enjoys pink a lot, so I might gift that to them. Now, whilst I've been working on a lot of these new projects, I've kind of given up on some of my old projects. So I'm just going to show them really quick. So these were the Our Lilies mystery cow that I was working on. Haven't made any progress on those. I'm just going to talk about it because they're featured in previous podcast episodes as well. And then this project, which is the sweater number 23, same thing, haven't really made any progress. I've actually had to take out the needle that I was using for finishing the cuff on this sleeve, which really only had like a couple centimeters left just because I had to use the needles for one of my other projects, which I was more excited about casting on than continuing on this jumper. If you followed some of my old previous episodes, I've mentioned how I haven't really enjoyed working on this project too much because the yarn is quite scratchy, so it's not very pleasant to knit with. And especially now that I'm working with the Knitting with Olive yarn, which is super soft, I don't really have an inclination to go back to this. And also I'm busy with Christmas gift knitting. And then moving on to acquisitions and future plans. So in terms of acquisitions, I actually recently was gifted some yarn by a friend who went to America and then stayed at ours recently. So she brought this back as like souvenir slash thank you for letting her stay in my flat type of gift. And it's Malabrigio yarn, which I'm very excited about because I've heard some really good things about this. It's Malabrigio Rios, which is a worsted weight 100% superwash merino wool. It's in the colorway 289 Pisces. I'm not Pisces, but this is a really lovely, lovely color. It's got really beautiful hues of purple and blue, as well as specks of orange. I really enjoy specks of orange in things hand-dyed like this. I think I've got just enough to make a nice chunky Oslo hat. So I haven't got enough to make, for example, my PhD vest, which this would have been perfect gauge for. At my local yarn store, they do sell Malabrigio yarn. I will see maybe if they have an extra skein of this color and a similar enough dye lot that I can mix these together. Because if I have 3 of these, it will be enough to make a PhD vest. And I feel like the PhD vest will be a really good way of showcasing the beautiful dyeing job of this yarn. But otherwise, if I can't find it, I'll just settle with an Oslo hat, which is also a great way of showing off the hand-dyed colors because it's a stockinette hat, right? I actually haven't got an Oslo hat for myself. I've made the Oslo hat 3 or 4 times by now, and I still don't have one for myself. I was planning on making one with the cashmere yarn, the red cashmere yarn I mentioned earlier as well. And then in terms of future plans, first of all, really need to make sure that I get knitting with my Christmas gift knit plans so that they're done on time. And the one thing I haven't cast on yet is I've got this Symphony Terra yarn from Knit Pro, which is quite interesting. Like, I didn't know Knit Pro did hand-dyed yarn. I am planning to knit some red socks for my dad, but this time fingering weight socks, basically. I am planning to do the same pattern that I used for my partner's socks. So it was like basic rib socks by Kate Atherley, who I didn't know is the same Kate Atherley who made the book about maths for knitting, which has been kind of going around a lot on Instagram recently. It's been hailed as a great book for all the maths you need for knitting, from like gauge conversion to like, yeah, things like that essentially. It's the same Kate Atherley who designed the free pattern for basic ribbed socks, which I knitted for my partner, which my dad tried on and it was like a perfect fit for him. So he requested the exact same pattern. So yeah, this I will knit in this Symphony Terra, which is a hand-dyed yarn, 75% extra fine merino and 25% polyamide. It's a classic fingering weight with 400 meters per 100 gram. And look at this blue. It is so beautiful. I don't know if it will show up well on camera, but it's a mix of this kind of azure blue mixed with brown. And I think my dad would really enjoy this. He has been wearing some DK weight ribbed socks, the same ones I'm knitting for my brother. But he got those 2 Christmases ago, or 1 Christmas ago, I can't remember. My parents recently moved to the UK from Singapore, so they need warm stuff, warm accessories. So I hope that these warm socks will be used a lot by my dad. So this concludes today's podcast episode. I'm sorry that my finished object weren't as exciting as some of my previous episodes. I feel like I had a streak of finishing a few jumpers, like this one, the Moby sweater and the porcelain sweater, which were like big projects. And then I haven't really I'm not really close to finishing a jumper like that anytime soon. So sometimes I feel like, yeah, I don't know if I should still do a podcast episode when I don't have like big finished objects to share. But then again, I feel like that's also just the nature of knitting, and knitting at a normal pace whilst having like a full-time job or being a full-time student. So I think it's a bit more realistic if I still do podcast episodes where I don't necessarily have big projects, big finished projects to share, because hopefully that kind of shows to everyone and my audience that like, you don't have to be knitting a jumper every month to talk about your knitting project. I think it's interesting on the knitting YouTube space to see the whole spectrum of people's knitting kind of speed and project progress. Anyway, I hope that people have a nice weekend, and thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you next time.